I'm Mike Costello, and I'm here with Dr. Iris Freelander, and we'd like to talk to you today about nourishing the life force. You know, within each one of us, there is a life force, a physical life force and a divine life force. And both of those need to be strongly nourished. And in New Thought metaphysical philosophy, we talk a lot about the mind-body-spirit connection. And that triune part of, or that triune realization of our being is an important aspect to understand, and certainly an important aspect when we talk about nourishing the life force. All of those three things come together to constitute our life force, but then there's a magnificently unseen force that makes all of that work, isn't there, Iris?
Yes, some call it the Kundalini energy, some call it different things, some call it in part prana, because or orgone energy, and that has different names, but that means the energy from God's own source. And then we have the magnetic earth energy that enters our body in and throughout our bodies by way of the lowest chakra or the lowest force center in our bodies. And so all together, it said man is fearfully and wonderfully made, and indeed we are, because we have that life force that is a part of God. Mm-hmm. It's like some might call it the breath of God, but we know, each person knows inherently that there's a force within us stronger than we are, than our own physical beinghood manifests. And so when we acknowledge that, it gives it ever greater strength, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And that unseen reality is really what gives us, not only gives us life, certainly, but gives us our vitality. Mm-hmm. And of course, in today's world, we're all striving to be healthier, and certainly we do work hard as a nation and as a people to improve our lifestyle, and we improve diet, and we certainly use a lot of spiritual exercises and other ways of making ourselves stronger and more empowered so that we are able to enjoy life in a more fulfilled fashion. When we talk about mind, body, spirit, which is kind of the three aspects of our being, why don't we spend a little time talking about nourishing the life force in each of those? And our mind is really important in terms of our quality of life. And in metaphysics and New Thought philosophy, we often say on this program that we live in our minds and not in the world. So our minds are constantly creating the environment that we have. And in order to nourish the life force, that unseen power that resides in our mind, and of course, that really to us in New Thought is our consciousness. Yeah. To nourish a healthy, dynamic consciousness within the mind, we need to do a few things, don't we? We need to protect the way in which we're thinking from the negative influences and thoughts of life.
Yes, we do. And it's said that we're a spiritual body using a physical body. And some people think we're a physical body with a spiritual aspect. It wouldn't matter how we think of it. We are indeed that. And so personally, I think that, first of all, we need to keep our body sound and strong and our minds as clear as we possibly can. And then our spirit works. But it all works together, doesn't it? It's not really that one is more important than the other, because we might say, well, our physical body is not nearly as important as our spiritual, but it is. Because if we don't keep a strong, clear physical body, then our mind goes, and our mind is not clear. And there's more and more work being done about Alzheimer's now, and they're saying, stay busy, stay active, use your mind. And they say they have these tests showing that the people who use their minds really are less apt to get Alzheimer's, or it's not going to be very drastic for them. They're not going to lose their mind in totality. But whatever it is, it's our own self-worth at the basis of that, isn't it?
It is how our mind is operating and perceiving life.
Yes. And so when we have a strong sense of self-worth, knowing that we are a part of Creator God, that gives us a stronger sense of self-worth, and knowing that everyone has that same, not potential, but the same actuality, we are all a part of each other and a part of God, then it brings us into a greater state of humility and of acceptance that we do have control of our lives, and it's up to us. And as you say always, we live in our minds and not in the world. Our minds determine how we're going with our lives. And so when we think of mind, body, and spirit, first of all, we keep our body as healthy as we can and honor it as a temple of God. And when we honor it as a temple of God, a lot of things, extraneous things, enter into that. And so then as we know that as our bodies go, so go our minds, then and then we're more open to the spiritual aspect of being, which is always there for us all the time. We have but to draw from it.
And that spiritual aspect, we have mind, body, spirit, but that spirit dynamic or part of our being is really what we want to be at peace, isn't it? And that brings peace to our mind and to our physical bodies. And so if our spirit is at peace and is at one with the presence and the power of God or the divine, then our spiritual being is centered in the presence, and our physical body is healthy and strong, and our mental outlook is positive and creative. Then we're able to be the people, the wonderful people we want to be.
Yeah.
But if any of these are out of sync, so to speak, or if we begin with a spiritual aspect of our lives that is in conflict and turmoil and not in a peaceful state, it certainly creates in our minds confusion, and it creates in our bodies stress. And so all of those things are connected by the actions one with another, and it's important for us to understand that that connectiveness is there, and so we really can't give more emphasis to one than the other. We have to balance it and balance the fact that we're taking care of ourselves in all three of those aspects.
Yes, and when we do, it's showing respect for ourselves, the same respect that we give others and should give others. And so as we respect ourselves and honor ourselves as being the spirit inhabiting the body, or vice versa, as one chooses to view it, it's all the same, isn't it?
Now, from the physical standpoint, the body standpoint, our mental image of our body has a lot to do with it, doesn't it? And of course, we see in psychological and physiological and psychological diseases like eating disorders, for instance, a perception, a mental perception that is not in accord with reality. So how we see our bodies and how we see ourselves. And so for many people in our counseling work and in our spiritual work, we see people who are at conflict with the way that they look. They don't like the way that they look. Some people don't like the way they look. Some people don't like the way they age. Some people don't like some certain aspect of their physical being. And that impacts us in a very negative way, doesn't it? When our mental image of our physical body is distorted.
Yes, it does. An extreme example of that in an unpleasant way would be those people who have bulimia and anorexia, because they see themselves as being not what they are, but different and more unattractive than they truly are. And so then they go to extremes and punish the body, and in a sense, that's what they're doing. And when we see ourselves as a child of God or as a part of God, I think then we're more happy with what we are, and we accept that whatever we are, that's what we are. And it doesn't. We just do the. Years ago, I taught in a modeling school, and we said something to all the students that I thought was just wonderful. And I still think of that to this day, and it's been more than 30 years since I did that. But do all you can to change, look at yourself, study yourself, change that which you wish to, and then forget yourself. And isn't that good advice? You couldn't have better advice, because just see yourself clearly and then see what you want to change, do all you can to change it, and then forget it. Because and then get on with your life and forget it.
To very, very good advice.
Yes.
And so whether it was 40, 30 years ago or the present day.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, the aspect of our mind and nourishing the life force in our mind, we all know what stress does and confusion does. And it creates a physical manifestation, doesn't it? So that mental connection, if we are debilitated from the standpoint of our mind, or if we're confused, or if we're angry, or if we're negative in mind, we're stressed in body, and then we have all kinds of diseases that come from that.
Yes, they do manifest in that way, and it's sad to see that we make our own bodies ill just by by our negative thinking and allowing the stress to get to us. And if we don't allow the stress to get to us, and if we stay strong in our own right and figure out what we're going to do, like someone said, uh, see what, envision the worst thing that might happen in some incident in the life, and then make your plan and then forget it. It's the same idea about the physical body. So if see whatever is a potential, and then figure out what you're going to do about it if it does happen, and then forget it. And it's easier to forget it, I know from experience, and you probably do too, when we figure out what we're going to do, and then we can forget it because we've given ourselves an out.
Mm-hmm. And so often when we're worried about things or fearful about things that are coming in the future, they never come about anyway. So it's a very negative exercise,
Yeah.
and it harms us in so many ways. And of course the dynamic life force is impeded by that.
Yes, and good examples of that is more recently the Y2K problem. What really transpired that was terrible in anyone's life. It might have hurt some big businesses a little, but big businesses have ways of coping. And then we had the earthquake scare, and everyone was hoarding food and water because of the big one. And then years ago, probably you couldn't remember that, but I can, when they had bomb shelters. Mm-hmm. So people had bomb shelters. And so we always look for the unexpected that's not good. And there's enough unexpected things in life happening that are a potential. And so to allow ourselves just to look at those things that are way out there, not close to us, well, we would do well to put our energies toward looking for the present and immediate needs. And we have so much energy that we have each day. So if we spend half of our energy worrying about unknown things and unexpected things, instead of things that we can just work with from day to day, then we've wasted half our energy. And if we put that energy toward things we can work with and do, and figuring out a solution and then following it, then we're more ahead.
Mm-hmm. And we would not deplete the vitality that we have.
Totally.
You know, and just what you were touching on which was very well put, is that we only have so much energy, but we have a lot of it.
Yes.
And if we spend a lot of it, and we all have the same amount of energy, and we don't need to go into that in great detail, but we all have the same amount of energy, and how we spend it is really up to us. And a lot of us spend it in very negative ways, and we dissipate the positive power and the positive force that we can have in our life through this loss of energy and consequently loss of vitality, and then loss of health in all of these aspects of our lives.
Yes, but we deplete our own energies in such an unnecessary way very often, because we're all going to have illnesses, we're all going to have problems in our lives, and if we spend our energies unnecessarily, then we don't have the energy to fight the things and to conquer that which just happens.
Yeah. So often when we talk to people in counseling, and I'm sure in your experience it's the same, people who are weary are people who are just worn out from this negative aspect of life. Yeah. And it does take everything that they have. And when we look at people, there are people who are just vibrant and strong, and it doesn't have to do with age, it doesn't have to do with sex, it doesn't have to do with anything other than their mental outlook and their view of themselves and their view of the world. Mm-hmm. And others are totally depleted and weary and tired all of the time. Yeah. And they're experiencing that because of the fact that they have allowed this life force, this dynamic power, to be dissipated in directions of worry and guilt and fear and negativity and regret and all of the unforgiveness and judgment, and on it goes in the things that have been taking from them this magnificent life force.
Yes, and as we value our life force for what it is, a gift from God, and our inherent right, then if we do value it, then we're more apt to nurture that life force and to not allow extraneous things to reach us in an unpleasant way. And we all go through times, there's not any person living, I'm sure, who doesn't go through times of less energy, because sometimes we just naturally have less energy. And personally, I think it has to do with the with the planets and our own configuration of the planets closer to us. But whatever it is, we know that that's true. We know that this happens. So if we don't fight the little things in life as if they're mountains, then we have greater energy to, and then also, if we have that mindset, if we know that we have the life force within us that's God-given, then we're more apt to not let little things bother us, aren't we?
We are, and we're able to deal with life in a more realistic and reasonable fashion, and we're able to get over things. And so often people aren't able to get over things. They get hurt, and feelings get hurt, and people become more sensitive when that life force is at a low ebb. And it's a good point that you did bring up, is that we do get tired, and so sometimes we say things that I know I say things in my lectures and my talks in different places, and then people come up to me and say, oh, but that's not so. Well, when we say things, often it doesn't mean that that's always the case. So we're not at all saying that if you are a healthy person, you're always going to be totally filled with vitality, because there are cycles in life. But we're talking about people that are constantly tired and constantly weary and constantly beaten down. And those people are really missing a great deal of life.
Yes, and don't you admire those people who are in that position, but they're working to get themselves out of it? I'm thinking now of a lady who came to me for counseling this past week a couple of times, and she's trying hard to find out what's wrong with her. And she called one day. She had made an appointment for 2 days after her last appointment, and I sort of discouraged her, but not totally. And she called and she says, I'm canceling my appointment. I'm calling to cancel my appointment. And I said, would you mind telling me why you're canceling it? And she said, well, because, she says, you told me that I have to learn to live with myself and work out my own problems. And she says, I believe that's true. And I said, I rejoice because, and I did. It was such a wonderful thing to hear her say that, because she's working on finding out what she can do to help herself. And so then I suggested she go to a certain doctor and have specific tests made to find what she needs to give her greater energy. And I'm sure that doctor will do that. And I was planning to tell her when she came, but I was more glad to be able to tell her on the phone so she doesn't waste her time or money coming to see me, because she needs to do that. So this woman is getting her life in order, and she's had some setbacks in life, and now she's getting her life back in order. And again, we all have setbacks. We all have things that happen that doesn't give us great pleasure. But just to keep going ploddingly is not the answer, but to look for ways to lift ourselves. And so isn't that exciting?
It is. Life is very exciting, and for this lady it was particularly exciting. We'd like to pause at this point in the program and offer you the opportunity to receive some literature.
We would like to offer you the opportunity to receive one of these free booklets to further your understanding of the New Thought message of confident living. Each month we will feature a different booklet, which will be mailed to you free and postage paid. Simply address your request to Confident Living at P.O. Box 7726, Long Beach, California, 90807.
Before the break, we were talking about ways of nourishing the life force, and you were talking about how you worked yourself out of a counseling task with this woman who was able to see from the counseling experience a very positive gem that you were able to share with her. We nourish our bodies, and of course today, you and I, of course, are very interested in holistic health and nutrition, and so many of us think a lot about what it is we take into our bodies from the standpoint of what we eat nutritionally. And of course, we could do a whole program on that, and we have talked a little bit about that. But I think often we do give thought, or many people give thought to what they take into their bodies. They may have a good exercise program. They may eat a good, healthy, low-fat diet and high fiber and all of the good things that they need to have good supplements. But then from the standpoint of how we take in nutriment from a spiritual and a psychological standpoint into our spiritual being and into our mind is equally as important, isn't it? And I know so many people who have a wonderful exercise program and a great diet regimen and are taking care of their physical body, and then they're constantly reading the newspaper and saying, "Isn't the world awful?" And so they're willing to work at what they eat, and yet we're constantly taking in or consuming these nutriments that are either making us stronger or making us weaker in our minds and in our psychological and mental makeup, and in our spiritual makeup. And that's something we have to be cautious what we let come into our being, and what we take in through our conscious and subconscious mind, don't we?
Yes, because we go through life on a perception. If our perception is that all the things we're reading in this newspaper are horrible, isn't it awful, isn't it awful, or the things we see on TV or the things we hear, if that's our attitude in life, then it is awful, because we're not going to have a good and healthy life, regardless of what our habit patterns are, because we make it either terrible or we make it as a part of, this is a part of life. And why would we be on earth if everything is just perfect? And besides, nothing could ever be perfect, because again, we go through life on our own perception. So what you might think is perfection, I might not, as an older woman, think is the same perfection that you as a younger man would think is perfection. And that's an example of how we go through life. We go through life on our own perception. We have to allow other people to have to use their own perception and to live their lives, and not try to interfere, not try to tell people what to do, but let them get on with their own lives. Because when we are trying too hard to change other people, then we're taking away our own life force. And we have a certain life force that is specific, and we can either trash it or we can use it. And the way we use it is living the positive life, eating properly, but we can eat the most wonderful diet in the world, and if we think bad, negative thoughts, then it negates the use of that. And you know, it's been said that when we ask God to bless our food, it takes away any of the negativity, any of the irradiation, any of the things that are negative there. And I would challenge our audience and us to try that daily, consciously. And I know we all bless our food, but just like in all of life, very often we do it in an unconscious way. Mm-hmm. So we have to put our energy into what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So I would challenge our audience to just put their energy toward being positive, and don't push it, but just be positive. Mm-hmm. Just know.
And allow those things to come into our minds and into our vision and into our life that we know are good nourishment for us. And so that if we know, for instance, that the newspaper upsets us, then maybe don't read it so much, or read it with the awareness that we need to work on the fact that we're going to read this and not be negative about it. And at the church and in lectures, many people have heard me talk about how Hattie Garlish, who was the co-founders of our fellowship, used to say, if the newspaper bothers you, use it as a prayer journal. So you look at it from the standpoint of opportunities to pray and meditate for people and for needs, and to create a positive vibration. And that idea of creating a positive vibration goes into every aspect of our life. And you touched on a wonderful thing, and that is, so many of us are used to saying a blessing before meals. Many people don't, but those who do often do it in such a ritualistic way. It's just something that we say. And in fact, if we were blessing our food, which is what we're doing, and blessing ourselves and our life, and receiving that blessing, and if we do the same with those other things that come into our lives, then we would be cautious of the things that we're reading and the things that we're watching and the things that we're participating in. And in some cases, it even has to do with the people that we're associating with, because it's amazing how many of us are associating with people who are very negative, and we're agreeing with that negativity and becoming a part of it.
Yes, and when we allow ourselves to become a part of it, we can know what's happening, be aware, and try and help others or help ourselves. But to just be a part of the negative energy is totally different than being aware of it. So we can be aware that these things are going on. It's just like when we read the paper, And sure, we have discouraging things that we read about in the paper. That's what sells the papers, everyone knows. And so they publish all the bad things and they twist it so that it does sound worse than it is very often. If we know that and realize it, we just want to know what's really going on, but don't internalize it. Don't be judgmental. Very often, we're so judgmental of those things that we create the negative energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And we set up this reality, and then we pull other people into it. And so we have to be careful of what we're pulling people into and what we are being drawn to and how that is impacting our life force, because it really is. It's impacting the quality of our life. It's impacting our vitality. It's impacting our health. It's impacting really every aspect of our divine and physical being.
Exactly. So what do we need to look at? We need to look at the magnetic earth energy just comes up through our bodies, and we need to, our thoughts change the way our bodies work. But we need to know that God's own prana, God's own energy is entering in and throughout our body. And you and I talk very often about deep breathing and meditation. Well, the deep breathing is so essential because then it gets the oxygen going in our bodies. So to me, our bodies work with the magnetic earth energy, prana, and oxygen. And so our thoughts would determine how much prana we receive, because if we're just at one with life, then it enters in throughout us. But if we're negative in our thinking, then we're shutting off our own good in that way. And if we don't do the deep breathing, we're not taking in the oxygen and our body doesn't function to its maximum. So we have to consciously do that. And of course, we talk a lot about meditation, and to me, meditation is just centering ourselves with the divine within, with the divine without, and just in a sense learning to simply be. And so we're infilling ourselves and setting the pace for the next few hours of allowing our bodies to relax and our minds to be clear and receptive. And when we do that, we are living life to the most full way that we can.
And of course, that deep breathing and meditation, really, it's a wonderful way to come to an end to our program, is really the pinnacle of nourishing our life force. And we nourish our entire life force, mind, body, and spirit, through deep breathing and through meditation. And through those two simple acts, we're able to provide all of the nourishment really that we need to bring about a healthy life and a magnificent physical being. But we really begin with those two things as a key, don't we?
Yes, we do. And so we can honor ourselves as being a part of Creator God by treating others in the same fashion and looking at other people with respect and caring, because it makes a big difference. If we look at other people in those positive ways, then their own self-esteem rises, doesn't it?
And as they rise, we rise with them, because we're all connected.
Yes.
And this life force unites us all and empowers us and strengthens us in a wonderful and magnificent way. Dr. Freelander and I have been sharing with you concepts and ideas of nourishing the life force. And we hope that you will begin a regimen of deep breathing and meditation and nourish the life force that's within you. We hope that this information has been useful, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Mike and Iris would like to extend a cordial invitation for you to join them this Sunday morning at 11 a.m. for our weekly celebration service at the beautiful Seaport Marina Hotel at the corner of Pacific Coast Highway and 2nd Street, adjacent to the Marina Pacifica and Marketplace shopping centers. You will experience the musical talents of Ms. Denise Dumeyer. There will be a guided meditation, prayers, spirited music, and a dynamic, life-changing New Thought message. Please join us this Sunday. You will be warmly welcomed into the company of like-minded, positive, and uplifting people. And remember, whatever your dream, whatever your vision, you can attain it through confident living.